Hey people, look, it's Patrick Lovell. I'm coming at you. I'm coming at you again with the truth, and it's pretty fucking simple, man. The whole system is bullshit. Okay, it really is. It's just fucking bullshit. All you need to understand is that there is a line of power that exists way up here, and most of you are way down here, and all of you are getting pissed on. They're pissing on your head, telling you it's rain. And then they're trying to get all the people down here to fight each other. Well, it's easy to want to fight each other because there's a lot of us that are assholes. Of course, there always will be. But I know not all of you are cowards or suckers. Okay? It's about it's about collusion and corruption of the power that switched all the fucking rules to try to pull a backdoor to basically pull themselves out of a nosedive to save themselves at your expense. That's it. That's called tyranny. That's called aristocracy. It could be a dictatorship. It could be, any form of, autocracy where, the people at the very top of it rule for themselves at everybody's expense. We have a thing called the full faith and credit of the United States. The full faith and credit of the United States was built over 246 years of history, most of it through conquest, that created this incredible geographical landmass that has unbelievable resources, which basically underscore all of the commodities that we produce. Now, then we became a global empire, and everything pretty much post World War II led to a situation that ultimately we outsourced. After, let's call it Vietnam and into the 70s, we outsourced the golden goose, our production, our manufacturing, everything that actually we depend on, and the whole world depended on it for a long time, to Asia to produce inexpensive goods, and then ultimately, the Middle East for energy, and that's globalism. And then ultimately, it all collapsed because the system had to create a facade that the United States was actually still a consumer society because we still had the power of the consumer. But that power was fueled by debt. And debt to people who didn't have income like they did or protections. And ultimately, people just started getting played in a massive casino game. And then ultimately that casino game just busted. But the house in this casino game is the Fed. But it's not a casino, and it's not operating under the law. Now, the game itself is a casino, but the Fed it was created by Congress to be managed or operated or regulated by Congress, but it's not. It's independent. The Federal Reserve has 12 banks around the United States, and the most powerful of which is the New York Fed. The New York Fed, of course, serves Wall Street and Wall Street's needs, and Wall Street is supposedly the lifeblood of capitalism. And if you understand capitalism, capitalism is making money for money, and for private ownership. But what it's become is a facade, which is, and this is what absolutely pisses me off to no end, because everything is upside down, inside out, and it's all pretzel fucking logic. It's not capitalism. It's corporate fascism undergirded by a criminal syndicate. It's a sure thing for those above the line. The Federal Reserve was able to save the day by pumping trillions of dollars into liquidity into bankrupt institutions that had destroyed the world through a criminal racket, and then ultimately they got paid out for doing so. And our courts literally foreclosed on millions of people that destroyed their lives using illegal documents by servicers and foreclosure mills, which were part of the system to try to clean up and bulldoze the madness that was fueled by what we call quantitative easing. And quantitative easing was just simply the Federal Reserve picking up toxic assets off the bank books so that they could actually create liquidity to presumably lend to the rest of the economy, but they lend to themselves through stock buybacks and all sorts of other manipulation. The hedge funds and the private equity guys and the asset managers, that entire aura of financialization have just been parasites on the country. And not only that, they do so by basically getting their friends that have the legal authority to do their fucking corruption on behalf of them being able to fuel them with the full faith and credit of the United States. I mean, that's where we are. Okay, so look, Enlightenment is for the bold. Don't be a tool in the full circus. My friends, failure is not an option. If you have the truth, you're bulletproof. The truth is in the con at www.thecon.tv. It's the one piece by piece story that this power cannot have you understand, because if you did, we could turn the table over corruption overnight. Enlightenment is being bold, and not all of you are cowards and suckers. I know that. I know that there are patriots amongst you. There has got to be 1 in 100 of you that are courageous enough, that have integrity enough, that are willing to rise to the moment, because literally everything is on the line. We could reboot this economy overnight to, create this explosive energy of creativity and answers to all the problems that we have, because we are that smart. But we got to get the power of finance out of the hands of the corrupt. It's got to be in the hands of those that live with integrity. Because if you have a capitalist market, a free market where quite frankly, the consumer slash the citizen is informed, then none of this happens. It's a race to the bottom. It's cancer. That's corruption. That's what undergirds the whole system. And when the foundation is rotting from corruption, as any system, it collapses. It did it in 2008. It actually did it in 2000. It did kind of in 1998. We've had these ebbs and flows of these freaking roller coaster rides that, a lot of, assholes within the system tell you is the cycle. It's not the business cycle. Okay? Inflation, this insane inflation, and this debate about, debt forgiveness for students, the $10,000 range that's supposedly going to create inflation. Yeah, I'm sure to some extent that it does, but let's keep it in perspective. Okay? The financial system basically hollowed out the golden goose. They do not work for liberty and justice for all and the United States. They don't give a flying fuck about the country. They're parasites for their own profit. And their profit is global. They money launder in real estate. They fucking, support bullshit wars. They allow corruption to happen left and right. We can spend trillions and trillions of dollars on fucking wars that go nowhere. In the meantime, we hollow out the middle class. It's just time that those of us who aren't idiots, that aren't fucking morons, that aren't stooges, that aren't freaking cowards, that aren't weak, that continue to let this happen. Now, am I calling for a revolution? Yeah, well, I'm calling for a revolution of your mind, of your consumption, of your energy, because, I know that if we decide to create a violent revolution, we're going to lose, because the power of the state and the police and the military of the United States is the most powerful system in the history of the world with weapons. Okay? What we need are people within the military, within the police, and everything that exists to actually realize that you've gotten played by a corrupt system. And you need to join the patriot movement to be able to purge corruption. This is history. This is what happens all the time. Do you want to know something about the Third Reich and Hitler? Okay? What he did was he created a revolution of the military first. Once he got the fucking military involved and the brown shirts and everybody else, and he had the guns, then he got the industrialists to do what he wanted, because the industrialists were like, okay, this guy's in complete control. Then the industrialists, which were the capitalists, and at that time they were just playing a game where they didn't want to become communists, and they were like, well, Hitler's not Stalin, so let's go with Hitler. Bottom line is, Hitler's like, yeah, do what I tell you, otherwise you're fucking dead. That was Hitler's whole game. And he continued doing it and doing it and doing it until 50 to 70 million people were dead. That's the kind of trajectory something's going to happen to lead at this age where, we have a population that's probably, well, it's how many times? Like 3.5 times the size, quite frankly, or 2.5 times at least the size of the population during World War II. All I'm telling you, it's a massive calamity on our hands because of stupidity. The country has to operate by separation of powers. It has to have integrity of the system. And what we got betrayed by were the professionals. The professionals who were in the system, who saved the system. which is basically the plantation owners or the aristocracy. I call it the new robber barons versus the new confederacy, but it has nothing to do with dynamism. It has nothing to do with the American dream. It has nothing to do with the integrity of law. And I'm trying to reestablish that. And if we march on Washington on November 1st, 2022, to surround the Fed with millions of enlightened people, we'll get noticed. And there's millions of you out there that got fucked by the system, that continue to get fucked by the system. And what are you doing? Nothing? You expecting somebody to save you? Nobody's going to save you. You got to save yourself by joining us, okay? I'm not Moses. I'm not Jesus. I don't have a pipeline to God. What I am is a dude who just has a fucking insatiable curiosity and an absolute tenacious drive for what's right. And I don't know why there's not millions of more like me. I assume there is. And I believe that a lot of you are in the military, and I believe a lot of you are in the police, and I think you need to march with us, in addition to all of the victims, in addition to all the people that, quite frankly, are doctors and attorneys and accountants and professionals that don't want to live in the system, that want to hold the system accountable as well. There is millions and millions of more of us than the corrupt. But here's the thing about corruption. Corruption is so incredibly powerful for those who depend on it. And then once they depend on it, it just spreads like a fucking disease, because it is disease. It's a tumor, and we got to kill it. If you've got a tumor for cancer, you get radiation. That's the whole point. You kill the tumor. Now, understand what I'm saying. I'm not saying let's go rip these guys out of their offices and fucking behead them in the middle of, the streets. That's not what I'm saying. I'd rather, honestly, think about this for justice. We overwhelm the system with the truth over the sea of lies and madness of corruption and complicity. We get the right guys in who actually know how to do this correctly. It becomes a political movement to purge corruption. This is not the first time in history this has happened. The entirety of the late 1800s all the way through, basically 1933, which led us to 1945, which then created the whole system until we got back to the 1970s, where globalism and financialization and neoliberalism and NAFTA and all of the rest of it followed suit. Because it's all a dog and pony show. You got to understand who's in control. Really, in our country, is it industrial capitalists that are in control, or is it financial capitalists that are in control? And again, saying it's capitalism is bullshit, because capitalism implies, it doesn't imply, it states clearly that you have to have creative destruction. That if you're going to make use money to make money, that the way you do that is ultimately the best and the brightest with the fucking guardrails of the law. Find the best ways to be able to create products and solutions to whatever society is facing, so they become the new guy in town, and both investors and everybody gets a rising tide raises all ships. That's the idea. But that's not how it works anymore. When you get monopolies, you get autocracy, you get corruption, but the whole thing failed. I'm telling you, the whole thing failed in 2008. The whole thing failed because of everything that's on display in the con, www.thecon.tv, and they got away with it. They got away with it because media was in on covering it up. The New York Times, MSNBC, and everybody else did not want to tell you that Eric Holder was going to give immunity to the financial system after we allowed the Fed to do a backdoor of trillions and trillions of dollars while they sold Congress on TARP. TARP was like $700 billion. We ended up giving the system $29 trillion, and none of you know that. And we've given them another $30 trillion since, at least. So anyway, I could go on and on and on, and I intend to. We're going to march. Truth is marching. My God, raise the flag. But the flag is upside down because it's in distress, okay? That's not a MAGA flag. The flag is for patriots to reveal that we understand everything is upside down, inside out, and we got to fix this problem. All problems are solvable. If there is a freaking game that God's playing, I'm convinced that he put us on this earth to solve problems. That's what mankind has had to do from the beginning. But boy, do we know how to create problems too. It's always a tug of war, and nothing is ever perfect. And if we do prevail, we're not going to be perfect either. But the bottom line is it's a lot better than the way it is, which would enable millions upon millions of people to be foreclosed upon illegally while the system pulls a backdoor to get trillions of dollars to the criminals that created it all. That's your America? That's what makes us the greatest nation on earth? That's fucking bullshit, and you know it. Spread the word. Tell everybody that we're on a mission from God, and we're going to fucking do the best we can given the circumstances, and we fight this stuff not because we're convinced we're going to win, but because we have to fight it because it's wrong. Onwards and upwards.